Good morning. More on the Dhammapada, and I've been looking at the section on the Buddha yesterday, and I'm going to carry on with that section because there's some very good verses in here. So, verse 183 is probably one of the ones that we're most familiar with. Cease to do evil, learn to do good, cleanse your own heart. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. So, I don't know, some of you might be surprised to hear that phrase, this is the teaching of all the Buddhas. Isn't there just one Buddha? Well, no, there isn't. There's many thousands, hundreds, myriads of Buddhas. And the Buddha Shakyamuni is the Buddha in our world system and in this particular aeon or period of time, we could say. So there have been other Buddhas and there will be other Buddhas. It's like the Dharma gets rediscovered again and again, and then it becomes corrupt, it disappears, perhaps the world ends, and then another whole system comes into being. So yes, on the refuge tree we see three Buddhas. The Buddha of our time, Shakyamuni, Dipankara, who's the Buddha, represents the Buddha of the past, he's just one of them, and then Maitreya, who is the Buddha of the future. But of course, those two, Dipankara and Maitreya, represent in a way all the Buddhas of the past and all the Buddhas that there will be in the future. So this verse, cease to do evil, learn to do good, cleanse your own heart. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. It reminds us, of course, of the story of a particular king in the time of the Buddha. And he had heard that the Buddha was in town. The king had asked to see him. You know, he'd heard about this great teacher who taught a very profound teaching that leads to nirvana. So the Buddha comes to the king, and the king says, well, you know, I hear you have a very profound teaching. What is it? What is this teaching that will lead to freedom from all suffering? And the Buddha says, cease to do evil, learn to do good, cleanse your own heart. Well, the king is not amused. He's very annoyed about it. And he says, what on earth do you mean? You call that profound? You know, even a child of 8 will understand those words. The Buddha said, yes, that's true. A child of 8 will understand the words, but even a man of 80 will rarely understand them. So that in itself is quite a teaching, isn't it? And it needs reflecting on because actually, I think more and more as I practice as a Buddhist, I think my goal in a way is to do as little harm as I can to other people. So cease to do evil really resonates with me. You know, I don't want to cause harm to the world and to other people and to have regrets when I die. So that's quite a motivator for me. You know, I won't always do what's best, but I want to cause as little harm as I possibly can in the world. One of the practices that I do sometimes, particularly on solitary retreats, but I do this occasionally when I remember, is before I go to sleep, I kind of have a check through the day. I look back at my day and think, what did I do during the day that wasn't very skillful, that maybe it even was did cause harm. Maybe I was rude, maybe I was intolerant, a little bit impatient or something. Hopefully it'll be subtle things, you know, it won't be anything too gross, although sometimes it is. Just having a check, and so that what that does is it makes me more aware. You know, have a reflection on the day that you've had, and it makes you much more aware of those small things that maybe life would have been better for yourself and others if you hadn't done them, if you hadn't said those things or whatever it was. and learn to do good. So at the same time, I don't just give myself a hard time reflecting on the things I might have done better, but I also reflect on what's gone well. What did I do to help other people? What did I do that made somebody happy? Or that gave them a sense of peace or something like that. So this reflection is a really good one. You know, always start with what went wrong first and then end before you go to sleep with what you did well, with what was good about the day. Cleanse your own heart. So basically, if you do cease to do evil and learn to do good, that's what you're doing really. You are cleansing your own heart. It's all down to awareness, isn't it? And then it goes on to say, patience and long suffering make the best training. Nirvana is supreme, say the Buddhas. He is no monk who harms or upsets another. So, yes, patience and long suffering. Doesn't sound very attractive, does it? Got to be long suffering. But actually, we do, you know, if we can be more tolerant when things go wrong, it will only lead to us being, happier and more content. I don't know about you, but I'm not very patient. You know, I want things when I want them, and I want them to happen in the way that I would like them to happen. Sometimes it's very good to go abroad to other countries where you discover that actually things in Britain run like a clockwork. You know, you can rely on things in a very substantial way, and you know, in other countries, it might just not be like that. It's like, well, you know, somebody might say something will happen today and it'll happen tomorrow or whenever. So we can be very impatient. You've only got to see people in queues or waiting in a doctor's surgery or something, and people can get really annoyed sitting there. Where was I? Anyway, I was at a hospital a few months ago, and they were running late, and the complaints and the tutting and the intolerance that went on was shocking. And I just sat there thinking, wow, you know, we get this free treatment. There's going to be a professional that's going to see us and sort out any problems. And there are these people, you know, moaning about having to wait an extra hour or something. I mean, take a good book for God's sake. So, basically, we need to be a lot more patient and long suffering. We need to learn how to tolerate that which which we can't do anything about. You know, things go wrong in life, and they will. So, basically. You see, basically, it's interesting it says there, nirvana is supreme, because we sometimes think of nirvana as somewhere else, being somewhere else. Here we are in samsara, and, you know, if we play our cards right, then maybe we'll get enlightened and so on, and be in nirvana. But nirvana isn't a place, it's not like heaven. So nirvana is right here, right now, if we let it be. I can sit here talking to you, I don't know who you are, but you know, I can be in whatever state of mind I've trained my mind to be in. You know, I can just be aware. So right now I can be aware that there's someone looking at this little video. And here I am, I'm going to send you metta. Here's metta. Did you get it? Good. So then it goes on to say, hurt none by word or deed. Obey the rules. Be moderate in eating. Sit and sleep alone and concentrate. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. Well, there's several things here that I think are definitely aimed at monks. So, obey the rules. Well, you know, it depends what system of Buddhism one is following, but there are various rules. various what we call precepts, and there can be huge numbers of precepts actually, but for us lay people, there are not. So what we recommend is the 5 precepts, which once again are not rules, they're training principles, and we know what those are. Be moderate in eating. Yes, basically, if you overeat or you eat rubbish, well, one thing it does is it makes you sluggish. You can't really be very aware if you overeat. Yeah, as I've said, I think several times in these videos, we're feeding ourselves all the time with food, and we're feeding our minds all the time. But, what we eat is quite important. And sleep alone, well, that is applying to monks. I mean, they're not allowed to sleep on what were called lofty beds. I think they're meant to sleep low down. And finally, even a shower of gold will not satisfy lusts. He is wise who knows that sensual pleasures are short and leave lasting pain. And yes, it's interesting. The more you have, the more you tend to want. As I'm always saying in these videos, I'm sure, there is no end to craving. It's not possible, because the more that you feed that craving, it's like an addiction. It can become an addiction. Whatever you feed yourself with, it just grows into more and more habitual wants. So these are some very basic teachings of the Buddha, and they're so simple that anybody can understand the words, and it can take us a lifetime to actually apply them. And the best way to encourage ourselves to apply them is to try them out, to dedicate ourselves for a limited time and just see if what the Buddha says is true or not. So, yeah, that's it for today. Bye for now.